Resume, found it. Okay, hopefully that's it for technical difficulties. So welcome everybody. I'm Tara Kelly. I'm Executive Director of Maine Preservation, and we're gonna talk a little bit about Jane's Walk Me, or Jane's Walk Maine. So as many of you probably know, it's a global festival of free volunteer-led walking tours inspired by urban activist Jane Jacobs. I'm gonna run through a little bit about what the festival is, how you can participate, and then I'm gonna ask a few folks who I know are already planning walks to share what they have in mind, and then we'll head into Q&A. So, who was Jane Jacobs? She was an urban activist and writer who lived from 1916 to 2006. And she's best known for galvanizing New Yorkers in her community of Greenwich Village to stop Robert Moses from building an expressway through the neighborhood. She believed in the power of individuals to influence their cities and towns. And today her principles represent the participatory planning processes and approaches that have been embraced in communities around the world, which is why we now have a festival in her name that is celebrated in more than 200 cities and towns across the globe. And Jane's Walk Maine is being brought to us by Maine Preservation, as well as our colleagues at Portland Downtown, Friends of Congress Square Park, Greater Portland Landmarks, and Maine Downtown Center. So if you're from one of those places, why don't you wave and say hi? We'll be hearing from some of them a little later on. And the festival takes place the first weekend in May every year to celebrate Jane Jacobs' birthday, which is May 4th. And so this year it's taking place here in Maine on Saturday, May 7th. So if you've taken a look at our FAQ, you will recognize some of this, and I'm gonna walk through quickly. The first and most important thing to know about Jane's Walk is that literally anyone can lead a walk. You're an expert in your own community and you have plenty to share. And so this isn't really a lecture, it's a walking conversation to have with those who join you on the day. Two elements that make for a great walk are incorporating interactivity in some way and getting off the beaten track, showing folks something that they haven't necessarily seen in their community or observed, and having it be sort of dynamic conversation, a sharing opportunity, and give and take with those people. So sometimes it's something experiential, like a scavenger hunt where folks are working together to find something, or like I said, highlighting something that might be hidden in plain sight. So some examples for this year's Jane's Walk that we already know about: we've got a vision for downtown Westbrook, so it's about rethinking the future of the community. Biddeford Garden to Table, thinking about foodways within Biddeford. Imagine Places here, the future of surface parking in downtown Portland. So thinking about how space is being used now and what it could be used for going forward. Inside the Heart of Museum LA, so a little bit of a behind the scenes glimpse of the museum. Sign of the Times, a walking tour of the historical heart of Ellsworth. Stonington Pier to Pier, a walk and talk through time, fishing, quarrying, and culture. So we have a vast array and a good geographic diversity as well for what we already know about, but we're here to help you figure out what you might do in your community. We want to reach as many corners of the state as we can and have as many participants as we can. So in terms of actually, once you have your idea, you might want to think about where you're guiding people. So typically a Jane's Walk is about an hour or an hour and a half. And for that time frame, we recommend 7 to 10 stops. You'll need to pick a precise location so that people can easily find you. Then from there, obviously map out where you want to go, but you want to think about the narrative. What's the arc of the story that you're trying to tell? Is there a natural crescendo of how you progress along your walk? You can use Google Maps to space out the timing. How long is it going to take you to walk from point to point? It's really good to practice your route beforehand, because what Google Maps tells you might be something different as you experience it on the street. You could bring a friend along with you to help you identify places to stop and gather your participants. Whether that's finding a small park space along the way, or a little bit of an alley to draw people out of the sidewalk, for example. And it's important in doing so to think about what kinds of mobility challenges or the ways that other people experience space, and be mindful of how your participants are going to feel on their walk. And finally, and obviously, if your walk includes any kind of private space, you would need to seek permission before entering that space. So again, coming into planning in advance of your walk, it's really great to include multiple perspectives. You don't need to lead your walk alone. You're an expert in your community, but you might ask someone who's an expert in a particular topic or who represents a certain organization or business located along your walk to step out and join you to share about their knowledge of that particular thing. So they could be along with you for the whole way. You could have your 7 stops and have a different person kind of do the talking for you at each of those stops. It's great to have different voices and to engage the participants as you're going, like their perspectives as experts of the community as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to kind of the day of. It's also important to think about having someone not just, speak with you on the walk, but help kind of wrangle people as you go. So if you're walking down the street, to make sure someone's on the other end, picking up the stragglers as you go. So it's a great way to have someone who might be a little bit shy and not want to lead them walk themselves, but who would be able to help you move the crowd along and help answer questions. You might also consider bringing supplemental materials. So maybe it's a handout showing the map of the route that you're going to take so that your walk participants know what to expect as they move along, or might be able to find you if they get lost along the way. Also historic photos so that you can maybe show a then and now comparison. Art pieces, artifacts, anything that might help to illustrate what it is that you're talking about and showing folks on your walk. We also think that it's a great idea to stop at a local small business like a cafe or a bar or maybe a public open space to continue the conversation with your participants, so that it doesn't just have to be the linear conversation of the walk, but a continued sharing and participation in the community. You can also make your information available to your walk participants so that they can follow up with you afterwards. So again, if you have some kind of handout with historic photos or with a map of the route, you could also include your contact information so that people can follow up afterwards. So when you're out there and on the day, make sure to start by introducing yourself, and perhaps the goals of this walk, kind of reminding people what the theme is. Briefly explain who Jane Jacobs was, how that might relate to the walk that you're discussing, and ask participants then to share what brought them to the walk, why they are interested in this topic, and what attracted them to this. Make sure that you're not walking and talking at the same time. Sort of the cardinal sin here. Make sure to stop, potentially find an elevated space, whether that's a stoop or a set of stairs or even a park bench, to maybe stand up and project your voice to your walk participants. You want to make sure that everyone can obviously hear and see you. If you have a co-leader, like I said, position yourself at opposite ends of the group so that we can pick up the stragglers, and think about wearing something that might be easy for your walk participants to find you. So, maybe it's a red cap or maybe it's a blue shirt, but from a distance that they should be able to keep an eye on you at all times, as perhaps you're crossing the street and get stuck at different lights. Like I said previously, encourage conversation. So you might think about a few questions beforehand to open up the dialogue. So if you're talking about a historical use of a particular building on your walk and it's within a conceivable lifetime, you might say, does anybody remember when it was this? Or does anybody remember when this building was something else? you might have some kind of, trivia about things that you've discovered in your research of your walk, and just check into the crowd and see if anybody already knows. And if you get questions from your participants and you don't know the answer, that's okay. You can kind of flip it around, turn it back to the crowd, ask everyone else if they know, to engender further dialogue and conversation. It's great for you to learn something as well on this walk. And it's also really important to capture the fun of the day. We want to see this festival grow and build in Maine, and one way to do that is to show other people what they missed out on. So make sure to take photos, ask maybe your volunteer or your co-leader to take photos, ask your participants to take photos. We have a shared drive that I can drop into the chat where you can upload photos after the fact. You can also post memories to social media and use the hashtag JanesWalkME and obviously in that case, your Instagram account or Facebook account would have to be public. But if you post to social media and use the hashtag, we'll get a great tapestry and a great collection of all of the fun and excitement that happens on May 7th. And in advance of the festival, we'll be doing our best as coordinating partners to promote the walks that have been submitted. So first, we'll need you to submit your walk using the online form by April 29th. I'll post that in the chat, the link to that in the chat if you haven't already. We will be listing the walks on our website. We will post them in the Facebook page. We will, send out a press release with the walks that we know about. But you can also do the same. You can share via Facebook. You can reach out to your local newspapers to see if they would be interested in covering the walk you're leading. Sending out an email to your personal and professional network to let people know that the festival is taking place. We also have a flyer template that you can download from our website, and we'll be working on a sort of social media kit with right-sized promotional materials for you to use as well, and we can direct you to that when they're ready. So that's kind of the quick whirlwind of what is involved in leading a Janes Walk and what our tips and tricks are for making it successful. I'm going to turn to some of my colleagues now to talk about what they have planned, and then we'll happily dive into any questions that you might have. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to go ahead and ask Carey from Portland Downtown to talk about his plan.
Great, thank you, Tara. Thanks for giving that great introduction. I should say that we're very fortunate. Janes Walk has existed previously in Portland a number of years ago, and we're happy to be bringing it back. So I thank those folks who started it previously for their good work, and the pandemic slowed it down. But Tara and Joanna and CJ have a strong history of doing these Janes Walks in various places across the country, New York and Providence. So we're super fortunate to have their experience and wisdom. So I'm thrilled to be partnering with them. Here at Portland Downtown, the walk that I'll be leading, along probably with my dear and lovely wife, Sarah Hansen, there with Greater Portland Landmarks as my co-leader. It's going to be, we're calling it Imagine Places Here. It's a little bit inspired by the Bicycle Coalition of Maine, one of our other partners in this, and they have a great program called Imagine People Here, where they do some tactical urbanism work on streets, road diets, and that sort of thing. So we've got a number of surface parking lots, or, if you're in this urban planning world like I am, and I know a number of you are, they often refer to as parking craters. And many of them have either had historic buildings that have been demolished, or they've had development plans that have come and maybe gone by the wayside. But we want to have just that walking conversation about what the best thing these spaces can be in the future. Our guess is that it's not a surface parking lot. And there are things that are unique to Portland that we want to have conversations about. How does the Green New Deal impact that? Will it mean the highest and best level of development won't happen for the short-term future? What are the implications, gentrification, these sort of things? So again, it's a walking conversation. There are a number of, more than some people might know, surface parking lots. I've got the addresses of them, capacities. We'll show photographs, like I said, and we just want to have that conversation. It will be about an hour. We'll meet in front of my office at 549 Congress Street. We'll probably end up in Monument Square, and maybe we'll stop into Shay's or David's and have a after discussion. So should be a fun event. I would love to see some of you join us.
Thanks, Carrie. CJ, sticking in Portland, tell us what you're planning.
Yeah, so everybody, I'm CJ with the Friends of Congress Square Park, and I did a couple Jane's walks in Providence. I lived there for about 7 years, and my favorite one that I did there was about looking for like gargoyles and grotesques up in the architecture of the downtown. Which I want to mention was the whole kind of thing was inspired by this book that I found that is actually like collaborated with Stephen King, but it's basically like a photo collection of similar stuff that the photographer found in New York. And so it just got me like looking for these things everywhere in the buildings, and it was just a lot of fun. Just to like walk around and add something sort of like a scavenger hunt to just like my walking errands or whatever downtown. And so I basically just made a Jane's walk out of that and invited people to come along with me. And I kind of showed like a bunch that I had found that I thought were really cool. But with this group, we found like twice the number that I even knew of. And so I think it's just a fun exploratory group thing without much of a direction or like, learning lesson other than let's just sort of pay extra close attention and like have a scavenger hunt together of our built environment. And so I'm replicating that a little bit here. We're going to start in my little park in Congress Square Park, just kind of like zigzag through downtown and end up near like Bard Coffee downtown, because my favorite ones that I know of are right there. So that'll be like the big finale, I hope. But anyway, I find it a lot of fun to have a relatively coordinated, at least as far as a route walk, where you're kind of leading the group, but everyone else has just as much a say in what's talked about or even discovered or whatever, and everyone kind of has the chance to like notice something that everyone else can like take pictures of and be in awe of. So it's super fun, and I'm looking forward to hosting that one this year.
Thank you. I know we've got some other folks who've already submitted their walks. Does anybody want to go first before I call on you? Linda's leaning in.
I can go first, Tara. That's fine.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Linda Nelson from Stonington. One of the hats I wear is as the Economic Development Director in Stonington. I was delighted to see Jane's Walk. I had never heard of it before, but I've been a huge fan of Jane Jacobs' work since I lived in New York City, starting in the mid-1980s, and learned her story and watched what was happening in her old neighborhood. Stonington, is not a metropolis. So you can't really call it urban. So we don't want to use the U word very much. And we're doing a peer-to-peer walk. We're starting on our commercial fish pier, which was built in the 70s and is a huge thing for Stonington, maintaining its working waterfront, and going to our public pier, which has become much busier over the years as well. And we'll have 6 stops along the way. And we're collaborating with our local cafe. We're going to do this in the middle of the day from 11:30 to 1. We're encouraging breakfast before and lunch after. And the 6 stops will help us to kind of, do what what some of the goals of the walk are, right? Really kind of build community, let neighbors come together in a place and experience some history and some news that they might not know about, and ask some questions. I've got 6 different people talking. It won't be just me at all. We're going to start by talking about sea level rise. For those of you who haven't been to Stonington for a long time, you may know that our main street is right on our working waterfront, right on our harbor, and our sea level rise projections are pretty serious. We're going to have to raise everything up by 3 feet or go running up over the hill within the next 30 years. So we have some serious climate change issues that we want people to be aware of, not in a scared kind of way, but just in a, this is your downtown and this is your community and this is real kind of a way. I'm sitting in the town hall, which was the first high school. It's a beautiful old late 19th century Victorian mansard roof building. Most of the buildings in Stonington are. We're going to talk about the architecture a little bit. By the way, the scavenger hunt is a great idea, CJ. We've done it here in Stonington. It's amazing. It's really, really popular, and I love doing that. We're going to talk about our granite industry. We have a small granite museum here on Main Street. We're going to talk about the mixed use and how we might sustain that, because right now real estate pressures are such that for highest and best use, all the buildings want to get sold and become fancy houses for people that they live in for 2 weeks. And then we'll talk about our fisheries, past, present, and future. At our public landing and in cooperation with the Center for Maine Coastal Fisheries. We're going to make a stop at our library. I just bought Jane's book for the library, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, and also a wonderful book, if you guys haven't read it, a shorter book about Jane Jacobs and her battles with Robert Moses called Wrestling with Moses. And on her birthday, as it turns out, I just found out that this is her birthday on May 4th. I'm going to be leading a little conversation at the library around those books and around Jane Jacobs' work before like kind of leading up to the walk. So we're encouraging people to drink local dark beer. That was Jane's favorite drink. And, you know, I think it should be a really fun time. It'll probably be pouring rain and high tide. So it'll be cold here, but you're really all welcome to join us. And we'd love to see some of you in Stonington if you're not doing your own walks. Anyway, thanks for the opportunity, Tara.
Thanks,
And
Linda.
thank you all.
And I should mention, Jane's Walk is rain or shine. And I've had my fair share of rainy Jane's Walks. And you know what? We're all hardy folks. We can make it. It makes it more fun. And you know, while on the topic of sort of pre Jane's Walk, Carrie and CJ, are you ready to announce what else you have planned? And you know, along the lines of sort of informing folks about the legacy of Jane Jacobs?
Yeah. On May the 4th, we're showing Star Wars for May the 4th. No, that's something completely different. The Friday before, which is the 6th, in Congress Square Park, we'll be showing Citizen Jane, the Jane Jacobs documentary. So no charge. Come join the Friends of Congress Square Park, Portland downtown, all of our other partners here, and have a good chat. And maybe we'll all go somewhere fun afterwards and continue the discussion.
What time will that be shown?
At dark, probably 7:45, 8 o'clock. I think CJ, was that about right?
Yeah, I forget exactly when, but basically sunset. And we will, I believe, have a food truck on site too, so you can show up without a bagged lunch or dinner and get yourself satiated.
Linda, do you know what her favorite food was? You already know favorite beer.
I only know the beer.
I'm gonna say Columbia's food truck, just so that it is in alignment.
Beer is food.
It is.
Do we have others who are ready to share what they're working on? Kara, Chloe, Rachel.
I'm happy to jump in. I'm Rachel Ferrante. I'm the executive director of Museum LA. We are basically thinking about bringing people in to see our relatively recently opened exhibition called The Industrial Heart, Enterprise, Innovation, and Creativity, which brings as much of our collection that will fit through elevators and stairwells from our back of house into the front of house, and then take people from front of house into the back of house. So what that does is not only shows you all of the stuff that's not currently on view, but also in order to get from our current gallery space to behind the scenes, you end up walking through what is currently literally being renovated, the Bates Mill. And then my current idea, although I need to actually figure out whether this is possible, is go from back of house to our future house, which is down the street, and hopefully take people inside, at least take people to the future home of Museum LA, but hopefully also be able to take people inside and see the unrenovated space before we renovate it, hopefully beginning next spring.
So now I'm regretting having said I would host a walk because I want to go in there.
You just got to stagger the time, because that
Yeah.
also, you know, in terms of how Jane's Walk works too, like other people who might be on Rachel's walk will already be in Lewiston, so they'll come to your walk afterwards
All
or
right.
before. You got a captive audience.
Yeah. So yeah, yes, Rachel, I will also be in Lewiston. And I think what I'm going to do, it's still a little amorphous, and Tara knows that's how I work. So I think I want to explore the neighborhood between like Sabattis Street, Main Street, Central Ave, and Bates College, and like that area where Bates and the Dirty Lou kind of collide. Because there's some really interesting architecture there. There's some interesting little, there's, you know, the Blue Goose is there, which is this great dive bar. There's Luigi's Pizza that's been there since I was born, like well before that. So there's like some interesting little local institutions there. The Lewiston Armory is there, where Jimi Hendrix played and Muhammad Ali beat Cassius Clay, and that iconic photograph was taken. So there's some really cool resources in that area, and I don't think anybody ever gets out and walks it. I certainly don't. So that's going to be the focal point for mine.
All right, Jonathan, we just need to come up with a good title, and I don't mind Dirty Lou meets Bates or whatever you want.
I was thinking like Dirty Lou, not Shitty Lou. Like if they want to embrace the Dirty Lou thing, that's fine. But, you know, it needs to be progressive at the same time.
That does raise an important point, which, you know, as this festival grows, having a good title is a great way to have your walk stand out and draw attention to it. So do think about that as you're thinking about making your submission, or what's going to make people really excited to show up and hear what you have to say. Others want to share, or should we jump into Q&A?
Sure, I'll go. My name is Cara Romano. I'm in Ellsworth, and we actually do have 2 walks scheduled this year. We just received last year our Museum in the Streets, and so we're partnering with the Ellsworth Historical Society, and they're actually, it kind of perfectly worked out. It's the 1-year anniversary, so that's sort of our kind of walk of kind of now, and we are going to use the outline of a portion of the Museum in the Streets, because it is actually a much larger area than we could walk. In the afternoon, we're working with Trout Unlimited, and they're actually going to highlight a new trail that's under sort of construction, and the title of that walk is The Urban Naturalist, and it actually is happening inside the urban core of our city. Ellsworth is a city of 8,300 people, but it's a mighty small city, but a mighty city nonetheless. And we are going to be highlighting a trail behind our library, which actually runs along the Union River. And there's a big push here in Ellsworth for that area of the city to be not only revitalized, but also for us to look hard at the relicensing of the Union River Dam and what is going to happen along the lines of FERC's relicensing. It's a pretty hot issue in our city, and a contentious one at that. And so we are working with Trout Unlimited to sort of highlight what is kind of going on around there, and sort of also using it to kind of launch the public aspect of the campaign to raise money for the last 25% of the fundraising to get that trail to be fully hardscaped. And we are working with our local coffee shop, Flexit, and they're sponsoring it, and there'll be tickets given to people where they can go and get coffee or cookie after the walk.
That's great. Thank you. Ambitious doing too. I'm excited. Draw a crowd.
I can share if you'd like. Yeah, so my name's Chloe Hepburn. I'm from Discover Downtown Westbrook. We have a few different ones that are going on, and we're just working on getting all of them registered right now. So we have a historian who is going to be doing a walk that he's titling like The Rise of the Falls, and it's going to be a history. It's the history of the Presumscot River and its relationship to Westbrook. And then we have a member from City Hall. They're going to be giving a tour of the downtown, and it's titled The Vision for Downtown Westbrook, and it's just going to be all about like the upcoming construction projects and like what City Hall's vision is for the downtown area. We have a member from Portland Trails. They're going to be coming and giving a tour of like the different trails that we have in Westbrook, and that one we need to adapt a little bit more and kind of brainstorm how we're going to run that one. But I'm excited. And then we have a member of the Westbrook Historical Society that would like to do a walk, but we just haven't been able to touch base with him at all. So I'm excited to hear that one as well. And then lastly, we have one that we're still like branding as a James Walk, but it'll be basically like an open house of the Dana Wart Mill, and we're kind of branding it as like a self-guided James Walk, where we'll have lots of like maps and pamphlets printed out of the mill. And then all of like the artists and businesses in the mill will be open for the day, and you can just kind of tour it and talk to the artists and like give yourself a self-guided tour kind of. So yeah, they're very excited. We're just working on getting everything together right now.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Chloe. Peter, I feel like maybe you wanted to share or had a question.
No, I'm offering a tour with others, hopefully. I'm glad you put that in my mind of the Western Cemetery here in Portland, Maine. And we've got a new group going, which has just acquired a 501c3 status. And I've already done a sample walking, and it's about an hour walk starting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon of the 12 acres that constitute the Western Cemetery. And it'll be called something like the past, present, and future of the Western Cemetery, because we have it's a very derelict and devastated cemetery. And so we're planning to do gravestone conservation, and we have a professional conservator who will come over the week of July 4th to do some work, and we're hoping that he'll help train some people to do some conservation work. And neighbors of mine and I spent over 200 hours last summer learning how to conserve gravestones, and we're working in collaboration with the city of Portland to try to ramp up this effort. And it's quite extensive. I mean, we've already proposed building a tool house and extending a water line into the cemetery. We've already met with the city's Historic Preservation Board on conceptual ideas. And you know, we need the social media presence, and this is going to be essentially our kickoff. I'm making these drawings and so forth specifically for Jane's Walk as a prompt to get us going, and it's really very cool. So anyway, we're hopeful it gets a good response. And it's going to be at 3 o'clock, so everybody else in Portland should schedule their walks at other times, okay?
That's fantastic. I think both between you and Cara and Chloe, talking about how you're using this festival to sort of catalyze, you know, engagement around something that maybe you were already planning or that you wanted to do, is one of the beauties of the festival, is that, you know, when it's all this big collection of walks happening across the state, people start to learn about what's happening in those places. And so maybe they can't make it on the day, but maybe they learn about your organization and they learn about your efforts. And, you know, maybe they make it a point to show up next year because they want to hear more. So it's a fantastic opportunity to kind of, it's not just crowdsourcing the walks, but crowdsourcing enthusiasm for the work that different individuals and organizations are doing across the state. So thanks everyone for sharing. I'm wondering if we have any questions about the festival, whether it's, you know, logistics and mundane or something more philosophical and complex. Happy to answer anything. We've got some good background in the festival here. So hopefully we'll be able to answer.
So are all the sponsors of the festival going to publicize all the walks? How's that going to work?
Yeah, so the plan is to release, the reason we have a submission deadline 1 week out, we'll still continue to take submissions after the fact. And truly, we don't even need to take submissions. Anyone can lead a Jane's Walk anywhere. They don't have to tell us about it. It truly is open to everyone. But if you do submit to us, then we can include that in a press release. It will be listed together on a website. So if somebody hears about the festival, sees the hashtag somewhere, wants to know what it's about, they'll be able to see everything that's been submitted to us in one place. We'll also, promote on social media. So each of the organizations coordinating will be pushing out information about the festival, and hopefully we'll get some traction in the press as well. But like I said before, it really helps for individual walk leaders as well to draw attention to the festival, because again, too, maybe you've already tired your friends out about hearing what work you're doing in your local community, but maybe they find out about something that's happening in a different part of the state. And they're tired of hearing from you, CJ, but didn't know about Museum LA, and they're going to go to Lewiston for that. And then they they saw Jonathan's Walk is happening there. And so they're going to have a twofer. So it's really great to promote not just your walk, but the festival generally. And it will continue to build from there. Oh, Teresa.
Yeah, I have a few questions. I'm from Friends of Woodford's Corner, which is Woodford's Corner, Portland. So funny, I just realized that our neighborhood is as big as Ellsworth, so in population. But we're thinking about doing something that's gathering spaces and third places, which kind of highlights more of the institutional buildings in the area or organizations that people used to spend a lot more gathering time at. And we're just putting it together. So I have a couple questions. One, are people doing RSVPing in their media? That's one question. Yeah.
I'm happy to answer that. So we alluded to previous experience with this. I used to oversee the festival in New York City, which is the largest in the world. And it didn't used to take, when it first started out, they did not take RSVPs. Mostly with the philosophy just that it really should, you just say a location and anyone should show up there. You shouldn't create a barrier to entry, and you just appear. And as a walk leader, you don't know who's going to be there. You might have 10, you might have 100, see what happens. Over time, that became logistically very difficult with more than 300 walks and somewhere upwards of 6,000 participants. So it became useful not to have registration to restrict participation in any way, but to get a sense of if we're going to have 100 people showing up. I don't, as this is sort of our pilot year of doing this across the state, I'd prefer not to focus on registration and really just have people know the location of the walk and easily find you and be there along for the ride. It does become challenging to manage, if some of them have registrations and some of them don't, for sending lists of names of people to some walk leaders and some not. So my suggestion is to keep it as open and easy for anyone to be able to participate as we can, and that maybe as it becomes a problem going forward into future years, that we might think about how we could facilitate that.
We tend to do other things that are actually just RSVP, courtesy RSVP, not necessary. So it's really just to give us a sense of numbers at all, but never require it. So we'll think about that, because I think that's part of the piece we want to, it makes a difference with so much traffic noise. Like if we're going to have a lot of people there, we literally have to shift a bit about where we go.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
A second question is that, is the is the Citizen Jane, do you know what platforms it's available to people who can't see it? Because we do a newsletter every month, and our newsletter theme is actually gathering spaces in third places. So it's kind of fits perfectly with the walk. But then love to send out a link or a suggestion of where to see Citizen Jane.
I think that you can watch it on Hulu. Am I right, Carrie?
You could for a while, but you know, they rejigger those every first of every month. So since we're looking into May, I don't know where that will stand. We're having to pay, it's been a process. We're having to pay for the rights for it to stream it in a public view. But there are some online platforms we can get to, yeah.
Yeah, because we'd love to be able to encourage people, even if they can't get downtown, to do it, to see that. It just, our hope is just to get the conversations going. This is what we do, a lot of these different kinds of things, but not attached to Jane. So when I bring up the book, people don't really know what I'm talking about. So this is nice because now they'll know what we're talking about. I had one other, and now I don't remember what my third question was. So I'll stop talking.
Well, thank you so much for coming and for those questions, and looking forward to see what you have planned. Any other questions amongst the group, or anything else to share about the festival?
I have a quick question. Can you sort of maybe just, I know that they're not done yet, but could you share a little bit about what sort of pieces you folks are creating for social media for us to use, just so that we use our resources and we don't pay perhaps graphic designers that we have on, Sorry,
Sure,
and it doesn't
sure.
have to be exact, just want some sort of direction.
Well, and I know that you had reached out with this question, Cara. So, we are happy, especially, at the moment, we're a small group of walks, so it might be different as we scale in the future. But right now, we just have a flyer that just has the date and the hashtag and the tiny URL so that people can find their way to the information. Folks are happy to take that and manipulate it to add logos if they'd like. If you need help with that because you don't have someone who has the capacity to do that, I think I'm going to go ahead and volunteer you, Sarah, to help a little bit if that's needed. What we were talking about right now was really kind of creating some graphics that are just really the appropriate size of the logo, so that it's a square for Instagram and things like that we can make available to you. You don't have to use it. If you want to use it and use it in like a swipe through so that it shows what the thing is, and then you have some of your other branding and other images and stuff like that you want to use, that's great. If you have particular ideas of something that you're interested in that you think might be useful for others, that would help to sort of create a narrative around this for social media, we'd be happy to work with you to do that and supply it to everyone in our little like media kit. So I don't know if that helps to answer your question at all, or raises more questions instead.
No, I think it does. And I guess it's a very easy thing that I think can happen, obviously not this year, but in future years and you've already kind of done it in a way, is that there's a lot of white space on there. So even if there's perhaps sort of just like a gray box, like insert your time and walk location here, and then a spot for some logos or something, and that template being able to be easily passed on to a graphic designer. But there's so much white space that we can do it. I just wasn't sure, if there were rules of engagement around it, but it's halfway there.
No, yeah. And generally speaking, the attitude of Jane's Walk as a program offering is that there's not intended really to be rules. There are some things that, around safety that one needs to consider. And, that would be something where we intervene, in terms of what's submitted, like, oh, this is going into private property and we know they don't have permission, and, it's a hole in the ground and people aren't wearing hard, like that's where we might kind of take a look at something and be like, maybe we should talk about what's being planned. But otherwise, we're just trying to provide the resources to create a fun way for people to engage in the issues that we care about. And that, the more who lead walks, the more participate, and that it continues to grow, and that, it can be something that really becomes sort of like a a signature exciting time in the year for people to focus on these issues and learn about your organizations or your advocacy efforts, and kind of build this place-based army to sort of carry the participatory planning and community engagement philosophies forward. So trying not to create any barriers to entry, but only facilitate an improved experience for both walk leaders and participants. Anything else from anybody? All righty. With that, carry on. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for coming, and hope to see you out on the streets on May 7th. So thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you for sponsoring this. It's great.
Yeah.